Welcome to Fast Pace, the new growth, leadership and management podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Dean Mackie. We wanted to peel back the layers on what happens in the world of fast-paced real estate agencies, from new leadership models to the management challenges we all face each day. This is about a new era in the estate agency sector. Rapid changes to business models, service lines, remuneration and growth present the greatest opportunities that we've ever seen. Sit back, get inspired, grow your skills and reimagine what's possible with Fast Pace. Every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Josh Phegan Digital. Brand and brand positioning is a really important thing for any sort of real estate business. And it's amazing when you start to think about, what does your brand truly represent? What do we actually stand for? Why do customers choose you? Where do they place you if they think about it? And I always think about this whole conversation around, customers that are your customers that are competitors' customers for a very clear reason, and people that are not yet customers who are making a ton of ideas and conversations about what they perceive a brand is and isn't. So Dean, talk to us a bit about brand and brand positioning. What is it? How do you do it? What's important and what do you actually do when you start to think about other businesses and how they actually carve out their rightful share of market?
Brand positioning is an interesting conversation, Josh. I think that a lot of people misunderstand what that actually means. I think a lot of people just think it's the brochures that you have and the sort of colours of your signboard and all that sort of gear. And I hear agents talk about marketing, they're often talking about property marketing or agent marketing, which is a very small sub-segment of your way to actually get yourself into the market and actually do business. And it's just, so I think we've got to be mindful that marketing is very different to what brand and brand positioning is. And I think that it's not so I guess what I'm saying is it's not just the sort of the exterior and the flashy and the fake and it's sort of, when you sort of
beyond the logo, the typeface, the color scheme,
all of that's
one component.
All of it. It's like, if you go and look at any significant and successful business, it's not just what actually makes that brand or that typeface come alive. It's often got to do with some unique points of differences that they're offering, and often the culture of their business, what they stand for and their values. And so I sort of think that to carry forward and have a brand that sticks with people and has people can actually have a sort of unique view of who you are. It's often got to do with how customers interact and experience your business or your brand. So
how come I can walk into a reject shop in and out, but yet at a Louis Vuitton I've got to line up and then I have to have a personal shopper walk with me. And does that set brand experience as an example about whether or not I'm spending $2 today or $1,500?
Or it could be, if you're doing it digitally, I'm a big fan of sites like Iconic. I think they get me, they understand me, they make it easy for me. They say, hey, you know what, if you like that pair of shoes and you bought them last time, here's what you're likely to buy next time. And hey, by the way, you might be sitting there passively 3 months later and the same shoes came on sale that you didn't actually buy, and then they're in your size. And so all that stuff, for me, then I go, okay, well, there's a certain way and an expectation that I have of dealing with that business and that brand, as opposed, which is really it's an amalgamation site, but been done quite smart, versus others that just don't have any smarts about them at all, and in which case it's just a pretty haphazard, messy experience.
So how do you go about setting forth like a brand? Is it about like a brand story? Like there's a great one about 2XU, which is like a running brand, right? And it's like, 2 times you, because there's 2 business partners that had split up. And so one said, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to be double what you are, mate. And that's how 2XU began. And then it, sort of linked into high performance. Is there actually a conversation around like setting a brand of like, who do we represent? What do we actually stand for? Why do customers buy into us?
Of course. I think I'm very fortunate, Josh, to stand here in front of you and have had the opportunity and I do it with a deep sense of gratitude to actually have done that for Di Jones of late. We had to rethink a business that had been around for 30 years this year that for us, it certainly had some incredible legacy moments and some legacy cultural stuff. And Di was, we sort of said, what was the DNA of the business previously and what did it stand for and what got it there? And how can we take the best parts of that and sort of redefine it for the future? And so yeah, I think it is exactly that, because that makes you stop off for a moment and say, well, what is your purpose, right? What is your why? And that's a really big part of what's the thing that's going to guide you around, what you strap your identity to. I think that's really important. And I think brand positioning is very much, that's where it starts. All the other stuff that sits on the outside of it around what it looks like, feels like, etc., comes out of really what your why is. And it's really the sort of the purpose of the business. And then you sort of get into the how it is that you're going to make that happen. Like, what is it that you're going to do that creates that unique point of difference that you can follow through on in a very congruent way with your customers as well as your internal team, and then what is it? What is it that you actually stand for? So having have been through that, and I got to say, a big part of going on the next part of the journey was getting clear on that, because we can't go out and do the how and the what and sort of, because what for, it just becomes a big hot mess. If you haven't got those boundaries sort of setting you in a direction that people can have identity towards and connect to, have some meaning to, then really it's just me too, and it's very hard to run and manage. So we set our sights on saying, well, let's get clear on that. And you actually were very helpful in that process. And also we underpin that with some really key values.
I think that's a really important conversation, that like when you think about brand and brand positioning, you actually do have a position. And sometimes you see, Dean, someone open a brand and they go, oh, I'm just going to go that franchise because there's no one else who's got it here. And that, like literally, so is that actually because that's one that's available off the shelf, or is that actually because you're really clear about something that the marketplace really values? So I look at that all the time. When you start to think about your brand positioning, you've got a decision to make. Are we top end of town? Are we a really good David Jones for everyone? Are we low end and cheap, and that's what we do? Are we an all auction company? Do we believe in open for inspections? Do we believe in vendor paid advertising? Because all of those things are going to impact on how these properties are presented, how agents are presented.
I mean, a lot of those things are very tactical too, though, Josh, and it doesn't mean you can't, just because you think that that's a good technique or a tactical, that's a tactician decision on how you want to run it. That's quite different to what I'm talking about here. And sure, the way that you do those tactical decisions actually have an impact upon the way people experience your brand.
Brand delivery, right?
Absolutely, right? So being really good at that. And there are lots of really interesting people around in the marketplace that are carving out their own niche brand on how they do real estate, in the Eastern Suburbs, there's some really clear examples of people who have a clear brand positioning, and people buy that brand positioning based upon what it is that they're doing, and so I think and I've seen some great examples out in regional locations and so on. So if you sort of come back to real estate and say, well, I think people do look at brand, but you've got to be able to follow it through in a very congruent way. And the way to do that is to set up the infrastructure that supports it, so that the delivery of it happens consistently. Both I guess on multiple levels. It's got to be to your internal customer, being your team, and culturally they have to align with that. And there's a lot of work when you go through to identify and say, okay, we want to stand for something. Not everybody is going to be aligned with that. So getting clear about the sort of people you employ, the tone of voice, your look and feel, etc. What sort of business you are. There are different, if you look at it, there are a lot of businesses out there represent some very masculine, let me tell you all about how good we are type brands. And there are other brands, and we see our brand as more of a listening brand, more of a softer listening brand. And we like to position ourselves that way.
So is some positioning not scalable? So like where someone's like carved out a niche so hard that like literally that just would not scale in every market?
Maybe. I think there are examples of that, where it can be, because they're so niche, so unique, so high touch. For example, when you've got a really strong business that's on high touch exclusivity, it is very hard. That then becomes highly reliant on the person, not the business. And I think what we've got to realize, and it's everyone's strategy is different. It's whatever works for you. But, in our business, we actually are a very high human touch business, and our people come before everything else. But what it's about is how can we create scale and systems around them that says, how can we put a bit of science into the business too? So then that way we get some consistency and some effectiveness and some efficiency in there for everybody's benefit, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm talking to Josh Phegan as an agent in our business, my conversation is, Josh, is it better that you have conversations with people when it's highly relevant to when they want to be spoken to? Are you just happy making calls off a call list that you don't know when they want to be spoken to, right? So you're adding science and technology and data, and allows me to give you calls that mean that you can make calls to the right people at the right time, as opposed to just randomly calling through people and saying, hey, by the way, here's an update on the property, right? Which is what a lot of agents still do. So you've got to be combining, how do you combine and get that balance right between what you're trying to do as a brand and the way that people experience the brand, and enable your people to actually deliver that and do it in a way in which they can still do them. They can still be themselves as individuals.
So if you were looking at a brand audit for someone and you say, okay, great, how do we determine our positioning? What would be some things that you would work through to trying to give them, some confidence or some knowledge about, the decisions that they would need to make?
Josh, as I've mentioned, I think that Di Jones stands for a really strong and innovative, passionate female. So it's really, for us, it makes sense that we embrace that. And let's face it, the biggest decision maker in a home is often the female. And it is an emotional decision. So I actually am very happy that we can sit inside the boundaries of that. So we sort of started with that. And then we also sort of stopped off and said, okay, well, what is it that Di would be, if we were to do something next, what would she be proud of? It was sort of an interesting conversation. And what is it, something that lights us up? And what we realized really quickly was that for us, coming from a place of sort of generosity, and also a business where we're trying to help. The attitude is how can we create more opportunity for people where potentially they could create more opportunity with us and together and collaboratively than what they could do on their own. how do you sort of package all that up? And so we sort of said, if you look at our business, we want to be able to we want to represent a business where we give power to people's purpose, right? And it starts with a brand that says we start with you. So it means that we need to understand about what it is that's important to you, so we can help unlock that for you. So that's both for our mantra internally, and then also externally. So the conversation with Mr. and Mrs. Vendor is, or Mr. and Mrs. Landlord or tenant is Di Jones, it's really important to us to understand what your needs are. Do you mind if we actually explore that first, right? Rather than just tell you how good we are. So just that subtle difference and change in terms of listening and generosity and actually trying to understand what that is, and then present solutions that are innovative and effective. They're not just another Me Too, hey, roll out the usual sort of marketing program that everyone else would, which doesn't really, it's not smart, not intelligent.
So it's interesting because like some people attack brand positioning purely from a competitor set. So how do I compare to my competitors? Whereas yours is 100% along the story of what do we actually do for people, for customers? What do we unlock? How do we actually, create more value in a very different way?
Yeah, and so therefore the behaviour of our team has to be, so if we're going out and we're going to represent that in a way that people can go, it's not just talk. I need people to speak plainly. I need them to be authentic, right? I just need them to be themselves. We're not into the flash in fake. So, you can actually, if you skip through the flash in fake conversation, you actually probably could think there are brands that maybe that's okay in those brands. And I'm not judging it. It's just that everybody's got their own thing, right? So us, it's about how do we be authentic? How do we be curious and ask really good questions? How do we sort of be brave, be brave to make big decisions, to actually have a crack and try and have a go, and most importantly, because those things unlock your power, they unlock innovation, they unlock change. But one of the things that we've really been clear on is in our entire business model, we sort of about brand positioning. Well, we're a brand that works in collaboration, and it's because if we work in collaboration and be mutual, then we know we can unlock our collective potential. So that then can actually be translated into some very clear points of difference for our clients. So what does it mean when we actually work together? Well, as an example, in our network at the moment, I said to you on the way in that between 30% of the low end and 50% of the high end is actually coming from, business comes from inter-office referrals, right? So we're actually generating a lot of business for each other, both for our landlords, vendors, buyers, sellers, and it actually starts delivering better results. So you can start to, so therefore, if you stick to the values and you stick to your vision and your how and your what, then it starts to then glue all the other tactical pieces together. So that's how your brand gets experienced in the marketplace, and
hence it becomes valuable to be a part of. If you're actually in a position, you go, hang on a second, that customer there, over here and there, that all connects, and actually now we're actually serving customers in new ways, because they don't think about your geographical locations as having different ownership structures. The way a customer sees it, hey, this is one brand experience, and whether or not I'm walking into Avoca Beach or Paddington, I expect them to be the same.
Yeah, well, there's going to be obviously the nuances for the individual, and we want to give people permission to sort of do themselves as well, right? So we don't have a one brush fits all, but I think that as long as you're real and you're genuine and people understand really what you're trying to achieve, and then you can demonstrate your points of differences and the tools that you're creating, even internally as an agency, like we're starting to now get to the point, Josh, that we can prove up some of the work that we're doing on a collaboration front with our data and our technology that's really producing really highly targeted call lists for our agents that are well and above what they could do if they were just sort of shooting in the barrel themselves. So that only happens because of the values and the vision of the business is to actually do that for them.